Like to call the meeting to order. The board president is attending tonight's meeting remotely pursuant to Assembly Bill 2449, and accordingly, this meeting, for this meeting only, the board will be accepting public comment in person as well as by Zoom or by phone. A recording and or broadcast of this meeting is being made at the direction of the board, which may capture images and sounds of those attending the meeting. Roll call. Steve.
Here.
Shelley.
Here.
Jessica.
Here.
Brian.
Here.
And I'm here. All five of us are here. Is your friend here?
Not here.
Okay, all right. Let's stand for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Would any board member like to provide comment on the agenda? Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll second.
Moved by Steve and seconded by Shelley. We have to do roll call votes. So, Steve,
Yes.
Shelley,
Yes.
Jessica,
Yes.
thank you. Brian?
Yes.
And I also vote yes, so motion passes, the vote is 5-0. No action was taken in closed session, so there's no report. Ms. Magato,
Yeah, I have
update please.
a few updates for you. Well, welcome back, everyone. We were happy to welcome kids back to school today after a lovely vacation. I think everybody needed a little break and are happy to be back and refreshed. I happened to talk to Chris Hazelton today, stopped by just to say hello. And we were talking about reminiscing about the magic of January, because there is something that happens in classrooms. We all nod, those of us who've been in classrooms in January, it's like everything clicks for kids. And they get the just clear focus they need. It doesn't matter if they're in TK or if they're in 8th grade, like January is the month where things all fit together. So it's a really exciting time. We're so glad that everyone is back. I wanted to let you know, and I don't think I've talked to any one of you about this. I recently started in the month of December, I started a new Sandra segment called Starbucks with Sandra, where once a month I put out a date and time and invite employees to come and chat about anything that might be on their mind. So we met this afternoon at Starbucks, and I had 6 folks come and join me, and it was really fantastic. We talked about a wide variety of topics. They were very appreciative to have some direct time. It was great because they were from 2 different schools, so kind of see common challenges that people are working through. So it was really terrific. So I'm looking forward to doing that on a monthly basis, which is great. Monday, we do have the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, and then Tuesday, we have a professional development day. So students are out Monday and Tuesday. We're looking forward, and maybe Carrie will share a little bit later this meeting. Looking forward to a day of professional learning for our staff on Tuesday. Wanted to remind you and the public that our priority registration closes on January 12th. It does look like we'll be holding at least one lottery, which is exciting. So we'll bring that to you probably at that first February meeting to talk about when and why and how we're doing that. Yeah. Also wanted to remind you the week of the 22nd, I'm leaving the afternoon of the 22nd for the superintendent symposium. So for the first few days, it's my new superintendent seminar series. And then the last couple of days are all superintendents in the state of California. So it's a great time to learn and connect with other superintendents around the state. So I'm looking forward to that. And I wanted to put on your calendars, and I don't know if you saw the invite that came to me today, but if you haven't seen it, I will forward it along to you. But the Santa Clara County State of Education meeting is happening on January 30th at 9 a.m. at the county office. So board members, cabinet is invited. So if you didn't get that invite in your mailbox, let me know and I'll forward you the invite if you have an interest in attending. I think it will be an informative morning. And that's it for my update today.
Thank you, Sandra. Our next item is the consent calendar. Would any board members like to comment on the consent calendar? Brian? No? Could I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Move the consent calendar as presented.
I'll second.
All right, motion by Steve, seconded by Shelley. And we have a roll call
Yes.
vote.
Yes. Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
And I vote yes, so it passes 5-0. Thank you. No employee requests to address the board, so we'll go straight on into the next section. To provide public comment on an agenda item, if attending in person, please submit a speaker card to the superintendent. To provide comment on an agenda item, if attending remotely, use the raise hand button if you're using the Zoom app, or press *9 if you're using your phone. Prior to providing a comment, please make sure your microphone is on, which is something I forget all the time. Requests received after public comment has begun on an agenda item will not be accepted. Your name will be announced when it's your turn to speak. Do we have any community comments? No community comments. Thank you. So we'll move on to action and discussion items, section 8. Student performance data. Mr. Drummond will present the 2023 California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress CASP data and share the work the district is taking to close the achievement gap. Mr. Drummond, you're on.
Thanks for having me. You may recognize me from the wildly popular LASD Student Experience podcast.
Oh my God, it's you.
Tonight I'll be talking about something very closely related to that, actually, which has to do with our performance data. And I wanted to start by talking about both academic outcomes that we want for kids and also things that we don't often think about as academic outcomes. One of the things I actually loved most about being a teacher was that a classroom is a place and a school is a place where there's this little incubator for all of the things that happen in life, happen right there in your classroom, and you have the opportunity to sit right next to a kid and help them solve problems that seem so solvable to us adults, but for whatever reason, kids need, well, we know why. They need help and support to do it, and we think about how we develop for kids things like character and creativity and critical thinking and collaboration skills. And I think it's an important part of the conversation I'm going to share with you and discuss tonight. Academic results from the CASP assessment, which is a really important single measure of how students are doing, and there's more to it. I'm also going to talk about what we're doing for kids that gets at both academic achievement and how we are in innovative ways where we're looking at making academic outcomes better for our students. But in addition to that, what are the things that we're doing that really help to look forward to improving outcomes across a range of outcomes besides just academic outcomes, and they're so connected, right? This is what we know about when we talk about the student experience in the wheel, that the things that we do to help kids feel supported and cared for and safe and like they belong really do improve academics as well. So I'll talk about CASP results. We'll zoom into some student groups and talk about some next steps, what we're doing to be responsive. I want to start by getting into just give a little, here's the state of California. Make sure you're looking at the top of that when you see those numbers.
I did too.
And I think this is different than I brought in the past, because I think this comparison is really important when we're looking at what's happening in LASD, not only for, all of our kids collectively, but individual subgroups. And I'll reference back to some of these as we look at LASD. So while, in the state average for the state percentage for students, achieving, met or exceeded in ELA was 46.7% in 2023. We're at 84.79, which is a slight dip from the previous year, 85.68. And in math, we have some similar discrepancies between us and the state, a positive discrepancy, right? That in 22-23, the state was at 34.6%. And in 21-22, the state was at 33.4%. So really exceeding what our counterparts across the state are doing. Science looks even more dramatic, where so across the state, 30.2% of students were meeting or exceeding in 22-23, and then in 21-22, 29% across the state. This is data I know that we are all really interested in looking at our student groups of historically underserved and underperforming students. I don't in any way, in putting these next to the California numbers, want to give the impression that we're not concerned or doing anything, but I do think it's worth noting that our students across all of these subgroups are outperforming their peers across the state. Having said that, there's a really important, I think, category that's not in here, and that is the percentage of students in LASD who are scoring at a level 1. So I'm showing you here students, like, for example, 55% of Hispanic students in LASD are meeting or exceeding. Well, approximately 30% in ELA of our Hispanic students are scoring at a level 1, which is not met, which is a large number of Hispanic students compared to the whole, right? That's 30% of those kids. Similarly, students who are economically disadvantaged is about the same percentage, 30% scoring 1 in ELA and 36% scoring 1 in math. So I bring that up because I think it's really important for us to, even though we can celebrate some of our successes when we're making a comparison across the state, our commitment to all students and to success, particularly of students in historically underserved groups, is very strong. So I want to share with you some of the innovative things that we've been working on that really put all students, but in particular, focusing on equity for our students in our underserved groups. So one important category of work that we've been doing is in screening and intervention. You've heard us talk about some of this before, I'm sure, but we've developed district data walls that are helping us to monitor progress for students in every school in LASD. Along with that, we have screening measures in place for early literacy and literacy across the grade levels. And this year we've added some screening measures for early numeracy, which our principals and teachers will, in the spring here, take a much closer look at, and we'll make some determinations about some next steps for both our data review processes and what's going to be really important for intervention moving forward. We have interventions in place for English language arts and for math, and kids are regularly at all of our schools being cycled in and out of intervention. So that's a really important component of screening and intervention. The next category that I want to share with you is about our equity work, and building on our work from several years ago with the Equity Task Force. There were two recommendations, big recommendations that came out of that group. One was around instructional materials and ensuring that the instructional materials that we give in front of kids are representative of the diverse kids in our schools. The second part was around training teachers, supporting them in implementing practices around culturally responsive pedagogy. And we have been working on both of those things quite hard, and you're gonna hear later today from Sarah about some of the work there that we've been doing. So I'm not gonna say too much about it, but we have this whole focus that we've been doing. The wheel itself is in some ways really responsive to that. We think about culturally responsive teaching being many of those things, all of those things. Additionally, particularly in that area of positive developmental relationships and environments filled with safety and belonging, this year we've given our teachers a number of resources to enhance their lessons, like explicit social and emotional lessons, so that kids are learning to name the emotions that they're feeling, and teachers have the language to use with kids when they do need to, like I was saying, get right up next to the kid and help them manage the experience that's happening right in this moment. So teachers have more resources than ever to do that. And we continue to have mental health therapists at our junior high schools and counselors at our elementary schools and psychologists to support kids there. We've expanded opportunities for families through the ELOP program. We have included, additionally of this last December break, we actually added some additional days during the break where students who were part of the ELOP program could go for some extended care over the break, and we're looking at options for that as well as we move into the future. Finally, I wanted to talk a little bit about support positions. We have a family engagement coordinator and a school community learning services coordinator who work together with the objective of connecting families with community resources and helping kids feel like they're a part of our schools. One thing that's coming out of that, they're working closely with Claire Griffin in the Student Services Department, and they will be in February having a informational night for families, a family night for families, for Santa Rita and Almond families in particular, although anybody could come. And the invitees, while everybody's welcome, we're specifically inviting families whose students participate in our intervention programs, so that they can learn about what the intervention program is that their kids are participating in school and get some tools and resources to be able to support at home. We'll have a breakout session there that is exclusively in Spanish. So we'll have that really great resource for kids. We'll be providing childcare and food and all of
My
those
next
things.
question.
Yes, childcare, food, all of those things. And of course, in the world of support positions, we continue to have EL specialists and interventionists doing all of that great work for kids. So we're really confident that we're continuing to innovate and build our programs to better serve kids every year, and feel confident we'll continue to see those numbers move. I hope. I want to move to talk a little bit about student stories. You know, we're looking at some numbers that are representative of how kids did on pretty much a single assessment. We have other data on our data walls that indicate how kids are doing across some local measures. But one of the things we know is that when teachers know their students and know them well, they are able to personalize learning in a way that they wouldn't if they didn't spend time understanding student stories. And part of our work with teachers this year in our professional development has been that, teachers have learned about what it means to develop a true learning partnership with kids where one of their goals is to help kids develop agency, a sense that if I want something and I put my mind to it, then I can accomplish the things that I want in my life. Mm-hmm. And along those lines, there are things that teachers can do in the classroom to help give kids a sense of agency through what we have described for teachers as push and care. Mm-hmm. And there's been a whole lot more to it than that, but we have challenged teachers and asked every teacher in LASD in our October professional development to choose 2 case study students so that they can learn about their students' stories, and get to know them in a way where they really can provide personalized care and push and know their families and more about them. So there's this whole project going on behind the scenes where teachers are learning for themselves about the transformation that can happen for kids when they know their students really well. And it might not sound like a very innovative or novel thing, but it truly is in our world where we are, in our education world, where so much of what we have been trained to do is around looking at hard data and numbers and assessments. We're stopping to listen to kids and be responsive to kids in a different way. We've put these numbers together. I want to do a little caveat here. This is how many kids? 345 kids. So it's a small sample, it's 1 year, and it's this one grade. But we wanted to think a little bit about, can we start to look for some impact that we're having for kids who have been in our system for a long time? Is it different than for kids who have been in our system for a shorter time? And so what you see here is that this year's fourth graders, so last year's third graders, 81% of those kids were meeting or exceeding on the CASP assessment. Among those, the ones who entered LASD and TK or K, 84% of those kids were meeting and exceeding on last year's assessment. And the number goes down ever so slightly as that continues. So the kids who entered LASD in third grade didn't overall fare as well as the kids who were here in kindergarten and TK. It's something that we included because we felt like it gives an interesting insight that we haven't given before. And I know there was a request from one of you that we disaggregate that a bit, and I'll work on that and get it to you. But I'm hoping we can continue to look at this metric year over year and see what we can learn from that as well. So some next steps for us. I'm going to kind of go back to where I was, which was around screening and intervention. This is a big undertaking, screening this many kids and providing the right intervention at the right time. So our priorities around this are early intervention, doing it in efficient ways that get us to the right information quickly so that we can intervene quickly. And so we'll continue to refine our processes there. As we move, and at the wheel, I have to remember the wheel is not as firmly embedded in your mind, probably as it is in mine, but we've been working on positive developmental relationships and environments filled with safety and belonging. That's been the focus of our work with teachers so far this year. We're going to be shifting some focus to rich learning experiences and mindset, skills, and habits. This is important work for a number of reasons. It is, when we think about what we want for kids, and kind of going back to where I started with the portrait of a learner, when we think about what we want for kids, that's bigger than academic outcomes. It also includes academic outcomes, but we have a responsibility, I believe, to provide kids an incredibly innovative experience. It's what every student needs, not just our students who are already meeting or exceeding, but it's what every single one of them needs and deserves. And so we will continue to work with teachers to take our already innovative programs and build upon them. And that's the focus of our work with teachers for the remainder of the year. A final next step for us is to evaluate how we're using some of the ELAP resources to ensure that we're giving our students the extra support that they really need. And I think coming back in February to talk a little bit more about that with you then. So looking forward to that. I think that's all I have. Happy to answer questions.
Are there any clarifying questions from the board? Brian, anything? No. If anyone would like to provide public comment on this item, please submit a speaker card and use the raise hand button. If you're using the Zoom app, or press 9 if you're using your phone. Marcy, if anybody asked for? No. Okay. board discussion.
Just wanted to ask, Greg, that slide that it was really telling to zoom into this one, zoom in on third grade. Are you seeing a similar kind of progression for math and science? Now, the kids who've been with us since TK or kindergarten more of them are meeting or exceeding standards.
This was a new metric for us. We only looked at it in ELA. So if we want to expand it further, we could do that. I haven't looked at it for math or science.
That's fascinating.
It is fascinating.
I'd like to go back a little second. We have a request for public comment from Pat Bodke. 3 minutes.
Thanks, Greg.
Yeah.
Good job. I was really glad to hear your comments
Pat,
about,
could you address the board?
oh, okay, sorry. I was very glad to hear Greg's comments about the 30% Latino and socially disadvantaged in level 1. I work with these kids every day. And to be a level 1 student is a bad experience. It doesn't matter how wonderful, caring, supportive the teacher is. Who wants to be in a classroom and be level 1, especially when 2/3 of the kids are level 4? It's not a good feeling. And so Greg and I had a chance to talk briefly, and I would like to follow up with him afterwards about that topic, because I think that is of vital importance. It's great. My kids went through the district. The district does a lot of great things. And this is something that we have got to grab onto and really address, because that's a lot of kids who are undergoing very difficult experiences every day. And the district is paying to support them for many years because it's not getting better over the years. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Back to board comments. Any more?
Along those lines, I was the board member asking for some more drilling down as to the subgroups in this. And I am glad that you brought up the fact that we do have, not glad that our numbers are
Sure.
30% at level 1, but I was glad that you gave us that data. Because as part of our will and the whole growth mindset, we are lifelong learners, and we're always going to be trying to do better. So I look forward to getting more of that data. I love this. And it's just the first step to more data. And going back to the wheel and a lot of the stuff you've been focusing on with our teachers as it relates to safety, and what was the other one that you said?
Positive development.
Thank you. In the long run it gives us the rich learning environments, because
They're all
if
connected.
they're safe in positive learning environments, they're happier to learn, and they're richer. Yeah. Just as a kid that didn't have a great home life, I know all of those things made me become a lifelong learner. So thank you for continuing that effort in this role.
Thank you.
Brian, would you like to say something? Make a comment?
I'll chime in with a thank you, but I don't have anything more to add.
I have a couple of comments, a couple of questions also. I think that the focus on the non-academic side is absolutely fantastic. I have repeatedly in the past complained about the CASP tests, that they only test a very narrow part of what we actually want our students to learn and to act and behave. And I also really appreciated your comment that every student needs and deserves private education. That's great. One specific question I have is, have you found that the universal meals program has helped kids in their learning, the environment in their learning, because in the past, some of them may have come to school hungry.
Well, I don't have a great answer to that, like whether it has or it hasn't. What I know as an educator is that when kids' primary needs aren't being met, that they can't, it's much harder to achieve. We all experience this too, right? When you're hungry, it's harder to pay attention. So I would assume that when we feed kids, they're more likely to have full bellies and be able to listen,
Okay.
participate.
Another question has to do with the comparison between the CASP testing and the data walls.
Hmm.
Is there a rough match between the two?
Yeah, it's really interesting. We have a variety of measures on the data wall, and what we're finding is that it is, sometimes they line up really well, and other times they don't. And I don't know how nitty-gritty of an answer you want here, but I'll give you an example that we have. A particular student that I was looking at last week who on our local assessments showed that it was performing at grade level, but then on CAS was below grade level. And when I dig in further, you think a little bit about, well, what are we assessing when we're doing our local assessment measures versus what are they assessing on CAS? And they're different, right? Particularly our Fontes and Pennell assessment is looking at oral reading fluency and a set of comprehension questions that kids respond to orally, which is very different than the type of question they're given on the computer-based or performance task, CASP. And so the short answer is, yeah, sometimes it aligns, a lot of times it aligns, but then we find these things, which is actually part of the going into student stories and understanding. We can go in and examine, well, what's happening for this student, which we're working on. The student's an important student and is telling us a story about something that's happening in our schools, right, where there's this discrepancy, and we want to understand why. Is it about our measures? Is it about we're not measuring everything that we need to measure? Is it about this one day of assessment for this student? Are we not giving kids, would it be helpful for us to give kids more exposure to the types of tasks they're going to experience on an assessment like CASP? Or there are lots of questions around it, but it's giving us opportunities to ask questions so that we can think about answers.
All right. That's all I had, and I just would like to appreciate Pat's comments about 30%, because as you commented, that is a huge number.
Yeah, I had a great conversation with Pat before we started.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any more comments, Brian? All right.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Devin. Dr. Bosco.
Yes, I'd like to invite Sarah Gerlinger up. She's going to give us an update today on environments filled with safety and belonging, some of the equity work that we've engaged in the district. Welcome, Sarah.
Hi,
Three
good
minutes.
evening.
Wow, okay.
Challenge accepted. I'm actually really excited to present here tonight. This is a topic I care so much about. And I'll share a little bit more about why I care so deeply about that. So tonight I'm going to share with you some of our work in supporting environments filled with safety and belonging for all students. I'll go over a timeline of our collective work in this area. Greg touched on some of those things already. I'm going to share a current project that we have queued up to begin this week in elementary classrooms. That's exciting to talk about. And then lastly, we'll take a look, of course, at next steps and questions that you may have that really can help ensure that that this happens for all kids, this sense of belonging that's so critical. Our wheel. We affectionately call it the wheel. You know it, I know it well. And, I thought about how I wanted to get into narrowing our work tonight around environments filled with safety and belonging. And you can't do it without all the rest of it. It's all, it's connected. But the story of this is that it's all rooted, the experience is rooted, it takes place within the context of an environment. So I want to share a little bit right now just about how we've been developing this shared vision of the experience we're talking about that we want to have with kids, with our teachers. And this kind of goes back to our story of professional learning beginning back in August. We started out the year together thinking about our own origin stories. And
that involved being vulnerable with one another, me being vulnerable in front of a lot of people, in fact, sharing those stories. But what it did is it provoked us and prompted us to think about this big idea here, and that's that students' stories are still being written and that teachers have a role in shaping those stories. And so when you put all those words together, that's the work we're doing here as educators. And it's significant. It's bigger than those words could ever capture. It's huge. We've explored the nature of the positive developmental relationship and how it is that teachers provide care and push to students, words that you heard Greg use earlier. And again, it's all done within the context of this environment where kids feel safe and are developing this sense of belonging. When we turn to the science of learning and development, which is really where this work comes from, it's rooted in science, it's rooted in research. We've learned this big idea that all students can learn and thrive from any developmental starting place. And the nods that are happening right here, that statement, it resonates so deeply with teachers because they're up here, they're doing what they're doing because we believe that. On the one hand, that can sound like a tall order, but really what's happening for most of us is that it's an opportunity that we have with students. It gives us an incredible amount of hope about what we can do for students. And it allows us to reach towards incredible outcomes for our kids, the kinds of outcomes that Greg was talking about that go beyond the academic outcomes. So this year we've developed a driving question as a group of educators. And the question is this: how is it that we can help students become writers of their own stories? We believe in the power of the story and that their stories are still being constructed. And what we ultimately want is for students to develop a sense of agency, a sense of purpose in this world. They're the writers of their story. Our job is to help them write that story. So this idea of knowing students and helping them become, right? This idea of becoming, it really helps us begin to think about what classrooms ought to feel like. And that then leads us right into the environments filled with safety and belonging. So I want you to do something with me right now. I want you to do a little thinking. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. And what I want you to think about is this: what is it that makes a classroom feel safe for you? So you might need to think about you as a kid, or just what you know about classrooms right now. What's making it feel safe? Just hold on to that. Contrast that with what might make it feel unsafe. We asked teachers to reflect on this in October. And we make space for this reflection because the science of learning and development, it tells us why this matters. We know that safety is a critical component of learning, and a key part of safety is a sense of belonging. It's through safety and belonging that a learner can take risks, explore, experience the kind of stretch necessary to learn and to learn deeply. It's even truly that sense of belonging that allows me to do what I'm doing right now. Most people don't know this about me. Actually, a lot of people in LASD know this at this point, but I'm petrified of talking in front of people. This is not my thing. It's very difficult for me to do, but I'm in a place where I have a sense of purpose. I feel that I belong. I feel that I'm known. I feel welcome. So I can do things that invite me to stretch and take risks, right? It's grounded in this idea. So when we think more about this idea of an environment, we're all clear, we're not just talking about the place or the space at this point. It's not just the physical classroom. That's an important component, but it's more than that. And something that we're building towards are these two ideas here. We are ensuring for all kids that the space, the place, the environment is identity safe and culturally affirming. Every child feels seen, that they feel cared for, valued, their contributions and who they are, simply put, it matters. So in my presentation tonight, I'm going to talk about what we've done so far and what we're going to do to help ensure this happens. So we're starting to narrow even more now when we look at this. And I want to go back to our timeline of our collective work in LASD. And the timeline begins in 2020, so 4 years ago. Isn't that wild? It's been 4 years. 4 years ago. The story actually begins before this, but we can go back to 2020 when the board adopts the equity policy. And a part of that policy was then also convening a task force to help make recommendations about implementing the policy in LASD. And so that following year in 2020, 2021, we convened a task force. And Greg mentioned there were some big recommendations. There are a lot of things that happened in this task force. A lot was discussed, but two big things came up as recommendations. One was around instructional materials, ensuring that instructional materials were representative of students in the class. That kind of took a shift into the work around social studies. And the other area was that teachers get some training and support in what it means to be a culturally responsive teacher. But to do that, there was another ask that we came to you all for, and that was that it would be very helpful to have a set of standards to support teachers in guiding their instruction around identity, diversity, justice, and action. So I'm gonna pivot from our timeline a bit to show you those standards. That's the social justice standards from Learning for Justice. And I have it very simplified here up on the screen. There are 4 domains in these standards: identity, diversity, justice, and action. The standards themselves have a very rich set of anchor standards and grade level outcomes for kids. But really, we could take these 4 domains here and think about them in the form of these questions. And if we think back to what made us feel safe in a classroom, or what we want or hope kids would feel like, I think it would be true that we want kids to be able to have a sense of who they are and that matters. That it's okay that we're alike from one another or that we're unalike from one another. To be able to know that we have an impact on one another, that we affect each other, and to begin to consider and further develop our sense of what it means to be an upstander, really, like this is taking it to another level. How is it that we can help each other? And so this is a much more simplified version of what you find in here, but really these are framed as inquiry questions because it's so important to invite kids into an inquiry around these really big ideas. These are huge ideas for adults to talk about. How do you make them kid-facing, kid-friendly? And so in the form of a question, we can start to get there. I'm going to talk more about what it is that we're doing to realize this work with children in just a second, but back to our timeline. So back to our timeline. So that was, now it's 2020, 2021, and we have a set of standards. And so the following year, the thing that's becomes really important is that we start to do some work with teachers. Teachers are in front of kids, and I had the great privilege of leading a cohort of elementary teachers around 2 key areas: social studies, where they implemented some inquiries in their classrooms, and also social justice, where they implemented a set of lessons around identity, diversity, justice, and action. And a big outcome of that cohort was that teachers shared with us that it was through books and rich read alouds that kids were making connections to these areas. It was that powerful set of books that we gave teachers to use with kids that conversations were happening in classrooms. And so one of the recommendations of the cohort was we need to expand this list. We need more books. We need to know what resources to use and how to use these kinds of books with children. And they also said, we need training. If we're doing this work as a cohort, if this is gonna go wider to more teachers, we need more training. Which ultimately does lead us to last school year. We had some professional development for all teachers around developing cultural awareness, really. And so the ADL led some training with us last year for certificated staff. Which brings us to this year, and now we have a curated set of books that are going to go out to classrooms this week. They're actually on campuses now, and on Wednesday they'll get launched with teachers. So teachers and students are going to have a set of books that will allow them to dig into identity, diversity, justice, and action for their grade level. And we'll tell you a little bit more about that now. Why books? We said the cohort said it was important and amazing and significant, but if anyone's ever watched a read aloud with young kids, it's magical, right? So we know that there's this aspect of engagement that naturally happens through storytelling. When we think about texts, we can curate them in a manner that's developmentally appropriate, so we can select books within the same domain, teaching essentially the same thing, but for a 4- and 5-year-old that looks different than 4- and 12-year-old. So we can choose developmentally appropriate material. books spark conversation. They invite kids in to access an idea that can be pretty big, but it allows them to have something to talk about when it's in the form of a story. You've probably heard this idea of windows, mirrors, and sliding doors, of seeing yourself, seeing others, and so on in texts. So books are powerful for that. They make really big ideas accessible, and they allow us to do what we're trying out this language here, mind work and heart work. The mind work is kind of like what's going on in the story, the theme work, right? But there's other stuff happening as a reader when they're engaging with big ideas around things like identity, diversity, justice, and action. So we know a read aloud is powerful, but what's it going to look like for teachers? We've put together a set of tools going out this week to everyone. So there's 3 things that are going to be happening. First of all, we have the standards and an opportunity for teachers to unpack them, really look at the individual grade band outcomes for kids, understand developmentally for a kindergartner, what does it look like? For a 5th grader, what does it look like? We have the standards. We have about 70 books across TK6 curated, aligned with a specific domain. And those books have gone out to teachers, so they have access to the materials right there. They've already been selected. And then in addition to that, we put together, we call them power pages in our district. It's a curriculum resource for teachers. So on the power page, they can see the text, a little overview of it, some possible lesson goals for that text, a possible anchor chart they might construct to teach with that book in their classroom, and the big ideas that they're trying to surface with children with that text. So this is all happening right now and is going out to teachers this week on Wednesday. And so that brings us to our next steps. And so our next steps, first of all, are to do it. It's happening right now this week. Tomorrow in leadership, we'll again talk with principals about what it's going to be like to roll this out at their staff meeting on Wednesday. On Wednesday, all TK6 teachers will get their books. They'll have a chance to look at the power page to start to think about what will it look like to do this kind of lesson with my students? What support might I need? What agreements do we have as a staff around doing this work? Questions do I have? So those are some of the concrete practical next steps that are playing out right now. You also may have noticed in what I'm talking about that I was saying TK6. So we're talking on the elementary end. So I think a target for us is, well, what does this look like with junior high? And so that's some work to be done. And I would say another next step that we haven't really named yet is that I've been talking largely about training and work with certificated staff, with teachers. What could it look like to expand to all staff, to more staff as we engage in this work? So that's what I have for you right now. I'm really excited about what's about to play out in classrooms, and I look forward to questions you might have to help push our thinking even further.
Thank you. Are there any board questions, clarified questions? Brian, anything? No. If anyone would like to provide public comment on this item, please submit a speaker card. Press 9 on your phone. Raise your hand on Zoom. Marcy, do we have anybody? Board discussion. Who wants to start? Brian, you look pregnant with thought. No? Steve, are you pregnant with thought too?
I had some questions, but I don't know quite how to phrase these, so if I get them wrong, I apologize upfront. But this sounds great that we're taking these steps. This is happening in a shell, which is our schools. And especially based on a comment we heard earlier, that there's, tension in classrooms sometimes about performance. Are we working with kids, making them understand that it's one thing to be successful by what you learn, but also how to help others be successful in learning? Is that something we're working into this at all? Growing up, one of the things we used to do, because I came up in a very mixed community where I grew up, and kids that were doing well were sent to other classrooms to help kids that were struggling with topics, sometimes to do a little bit of coaching. So it didn't have to come from outside, it came from peers. And that you became champions for each other. So my success is one thing, but if I can help someone else be successful, that's another thing. So kind of working those two thoughts together, if that's possible.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, this is great that we're doing this conversation internally. Are we doing anything to outreach to families? So I think, you mentioned that we're having a February thing. Can we pull all this forward early in the school year, that we're working with families early on to engage them in this as well. So I think that would make a big difference for the kids long-term over the course of the year. Or two thoughts that kind of like, I'm trying to figure out how to put that together in a way that makes helpful,
Yeah.
rather than just random ideas.
No, it is helpful. I mean, obviously, right now, we're starting mid-year.
Yeah.
And that's not the intention. That's
It's where you
when
are.
we've got the project
Yeah,
going.
exactly.
And so year to year, you think it would be starting upfront in the year, and what is the communication that from classroom, from school, what might this sound like to talk about the work we're doing? We talk openly, I think, at Back to School Night about what a responsive classroom looks like, what our morning meeting looks like, what, but this is a component of it too. And these are also outcomes that we have for
Yeah,
kids,
and
so.
you're doing the podcast thing, can we bring
Yeah.
Sarah into the podcast thing and have those conversations? And have that, and start to push that out, or to PTA meetings, or to what other ways to
Mhm.
communicate? And kind of keep that drumbeat going. I know that there are, the districts have sponsored a series of lectures that, again, by,
Principal coffees and different.
but
things
also
like
that, the ones.
The
that-
MBLA.
MBLA lectures that we go to. So anyway, of working with them to get this kind of stuff woven into that. So it's making it bigger. So I think, I like where we're headed.
Yeah.
It's just, can we make sure that the community understands it as well, and the parents get it as well, so that it doesn't come off as in a vacuum. I just, otherwise, I like where you're headed, honestly. So.
Thank you.
Can I build on what Steve just said? I think do you remember the bucket filling and the bucket division? I think one of the reasons why that became so successful on our campuses is that everybody was speaking the same language. And I think that that's what Steve is saying, is that when we expand this out to our families, our certificated staff, like everybody, then we're all speaking the same language. Because I thought about that question, what would make me feel unsafe? And I remember being one of 4 Indian kids in my elementary school of like 500 kids, I think. Just feeling like the other. And so, and I know that the other side of that is the belonging, but we should also think about, I always try to stay positive, but I also try to think about how I felt as an other, as opposed to how I belonged. And it's a little bit of a different shift. But I think that if we're all speaking the same language, we're all using the same terminology, I think that for kids who might have been, who were like me, would feel more safe in their classrooms. And of course, if you feel safe, then you're open, you're more receptive to learning, so.
Yeah, I agree. I was at a site the other day and there was a custodian checking in with the principal because it just so happened he had a connection with a student, like a very, very impactful one that was an important component, I think, of the student's development. And so to see the way all staff, all adults who are they're a part of the story, we all collectively are helping children write their stories. So I would agree with you.
This is great.
Thank you.
I just want to reiterate how amazing, both of your presentations have made me somewhat emotional. I'm so excited as to the educational experiences and really deep diving into the wheel and that we're doing tonight. And just the as I looked at those questions, what a classroom safe to you and what makes it feel unsafe, it did bring me back as I was answering the question in my head. And the fact that, as I mentioned to Greg earlier, like that we are continuing this work, and reinventing it each time when we're learning new things is quite amazing. And just really thinking about how all of this will make for these kids to, hopefully the 30% that are in the one category, as long as we continue this work, will be risen up, whether it is this more safe piece, but also all the scaffolding to teach them too. Is amazing, and I'm just glad that we have people like you all doing that hard work for us, and the teachers that you're bringing along with you. Thank you.
Anything more, Brian? Just a quick comment, so if I had to grade you on your presentation, you'd be an A plus.
Thank you.
Nice.
Oh, it was great. Your passion comes out,
Yeah.
and that's great. That's really nice. Your question about what makes you feel safe, what makes you feel unsafe. I was thinking back to my own experiences, and the students that I became most friendly with were always the ones that were on my bus, or the ones who were at my particular bus stop, or something along those lines. Except boarding school, which was obviously I was forced to like everybody there. So, you know, I guess there has to be an element outside of school that connects kids together, and then they can really, my personal experience has been that, that's just the comment there. You also mentioned storytelling, and the great thing about storytelling is you can identify with particular characters, and you can identify with their emotions and what they're going through with their successes and failures. So, the same thing happens with drama in plays, because it's a cathartic experience, right? Echoing Steve, who was echoing Charlie, who was echoing Steve, it was my turn to echo both of them. I think this needs to be, once you get your feet on the ground, it needs to be brought out to the community, not only parents, but also the greater community. Because I think many people, it'll resonate with many people. And I think that's really great. And you answered my question about 7 to 8.
Yeah.
One thing that we haven't touched on, I don't think, is what happens when they go to high school? And it's not gonna be the same. They're not gonna have this sort of welcoming community. There are 2,000 kids, 2,200 kids in Los Altos High, probably the same amount. How are they gonna be able to deal with that? And so that's an interesting question for a future presentation.
Yeah.
So thank you very, very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Carrie, I apologize for not letting you introduce Greg. I just went right ahead. So, Mr. Walkiewicz, do you want to introduce our next speaker or next topic?
Sure, so, you know, a lot of the great work that's done in the classrooms when we talk about performance data and social emotional learning is very important work. And this is also, I really do believe this is also a really important data, because some of the funds that we could save from the energy savings through Tara Verity's work, I think is really important. It's a different type of data, right? And so it's energy data. So tonight we have JP and Hetty with Tara Verity. They're going to talk a little bit about our performance and solar performance with our power purchasing agreement that we have. And it's a great system. We're really happy to have them here to share their annual report with the board of trustees tonight.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm Hedy Dalban. I'm the operations director at Traverse. I'm here with JP. We're going to do the presentation, and because he's been the portfolio manager for your old system, so I'm just here to listen to his presentation as well and answer any question you may have. JP, over to you.
All right, thanks for having us. Actually very special to be presenting this. My wife went to Almond and Egan, so it's kind of a close to home feel. But yeah, so I'm the asset management engineer, so I'm the person overseeing and directly interacting with Eric on a day-to-day basis whenever there's issues arising or any questions come up. So here we're going to talk about our annual report. So this is fiscal year 22 to 23. So that is July of 22 to the end of June 23. Just quick introduction about us. Tara Verity, we're independent advisory. We support mostly school districts. We develop projects and we manage the projects after they're operational. And that's solar and battery energy storage systems. So as you can see, I have a little pointer on this side here. This is the majority of our services. We monitor performance, we manage cases. If there's PPA, then we make sure that the PPA providers are addressing the cases timely and also honoring all of their contractual obligations. And then we have quarterly and annual performance reports. So in the annual report, we go over the financials. And the quarterly is just production and solar performance. These are, as you are aware, the schools. It's just under 1.5 megawatts for the entire portfolio, and they're all relatively new. Operational years 2018 across the board. So as we see here, the ownership, that they're all PPA, and Corporate Power is the PPA provider. Overall, this last annual year, solar performance has been very good. It's been about 96% of weather adjusted expectations. So what we see here, this blue bar is a typical year expectation. And then the yellow bar here is weather adjusted. So that takes into account any weather that's particular month. So it normalizes what we actually see based on the different baselines. And here in green is the actual production. So as you can see, some years are just a little bit below 100, some months are just a little bit below. Other months are significantly higher. So this trend is typical of solar, especially in this period here. We often see a little underperformance. Shorter days, less sunlight. This last winter was very wet, so weather there also affects it. And then obviously, if there's any individual site issues going on, intermittent outages, that also affects here. But generally, this is what we see across the board for any solar portfolio. Here we go site by site, so you can see the performance at each different site. So besides Egan here, everything is above 95%. Again, like I mentioned, most of the underperformance is due to the weather that we've been having. And then there are some intermittent outages, sometimes communications, sometimes production issues. And that's where we work with Forefront Power to make sure those come up and online as soon as possible. Here we talk about the energy usage. This has been a topic of discussion. The energy usage across the board is significantly higher than the baseline. These baseline here in the blue, purple. And these baselines have been adjusted after we developed the project. So we adjusted it during the 2019-2020 period, which helped a little bit, but the trend is still increasing. So across the board, energy has been high. One thing to note though is the utility usage is a little bit lower. And so that means this utility usage is the orange bar and solar is green. So your total usage is the top of both of them. So it's the addition of utility and solar. So with the solar, it does help bring the utility usage down a little bit, because without it, it would be orange at the top of the entire bar. So the solar is helping. There is just a significant amount of usage being consumed. Here, just to make a note, and we'll see the site breakdown in a minute, but except one system, every school was over 20% higher than the baseline, and Covington was 72% higher. So here's the breakdown we have here. So it's from 28 to 72. Pretty significant. We always recommend to try to keep it as close to the baseline to maximize the savings. But there's always different circumstances that come up that are school dependent. This is probably what most of you are most interested in. It's the savings. So savings are actually 258% higher than our projected. So saved just over $500,000 this past year, which is a very significant amount. You can see the bulk of that increase is from the avoided cost of electricity here. And so the reason behind that is when we developed the project, we forecast relatively conservatively what we expect the rates to increase year by year. As you're aware, the rates have increased a lot more than anybody expected. And just a few days ago, PG&E passed another 13% increase. So what that means for the district is that these numbers are gonna get higher. Solar's already in, the savings are already coming, so the more they increase these rates, the higher this number goes. So it's all good news for the district at this point. This PPA payments is a little bit less. This is dependent on the actual production. And so based on the kilowatt hours produced, that's what the payment to Forefront Power is. So it's right, it should be right around the same as the actual production that we saw earlier in QSAT. And just for an example, because in our annual report, we go site by site with all the detailed analysis. So kind of similar to what you just saw for the entire portfolio, but this is just site specific. So you can get down into the details of how each system performed in different months throughout the year. And then also system by system, we have the energy usage. So you can see what months are more heavy energy use and what months are less. So you can, this is all available in our annual report as well. So this is just to give an overview of the details that you can find there. And this is what we use to generate our savings analysis. So we do shadow billing, which in this middle column, this is the actual bill, and this is coming from the bills you get from PG&E. And we take that and we compare it to this section here, the simulated bill. And what we do is, based on kilowatt hours produced and the rate that you're on, we estimate what the bill would be like if not for solar. So in this case, the actual bill was 39,000, and we calculated it would be just shy of 116,000. So this is the net savings here on this particular meter. And a lot of these sites have multiple meters, so they're all part of the net energy metering. So these would get added up here, this 76 and this 1,200. So that's how we generate the shadow bill in there. So we just finished the quarter, so we're working on the next quarterly report. So this will be the quarter two. So we'll be preparing that and distributing that as well. But just a quick overview of how the first quarter went. Things are looking very good. We're over 100% portfolio wide in terms of just production. And for energy usage, still a little bit up, but note that they about 60% below the utility usage. And across at the same time last year, the usage is less. So it's good news to be trending downward in the energy usage. When we put together the second quarterly report, we'll be able to compare even further to see if we're still trending there, if it's going back up. That's all I have.
Thank you. Marcy, is there public comment? Is there public comment from the board?
Question about the
Charlie.
energy usage.
Oh.
I have a question about the energy usage report that especially Calvin's, which was off the charts compared to the others. Is there a way we're monitoring what's driving that?
I think because we share similar meters to the district office and we're an operation model.
It's Eric.
Yeah.
Leaving the lights on.
But the district is runs, I mean, other than the few weeks of shutdown over winter break, we're pretty much we are year-round operations for the district office. So,
But how did we ever project that was going to be the case?
that I couldn't speak to, but we could look into that.
Do we have more of the car chargers here at Covington, with having the district lot having them? Or
I
is
know
it-
we're gonna talk
Just
about
curious.
EV charging in the future. We can bring that up to find out exactly, but we're pretty close. Like most of the school sites have similar number of chargers.
Okay.
But every time I come out here, it seems like there are always people charging.
Yeah. One question, it doesn't necessarily have to do with you, it may not. We are now charging people we weren't charging after hours for, the EV, but we are now.
Yeah, so we, in order to meet the Bay Area, air quality management grant,
Yeah,
we've received some grants for the EV charging stations for the vehicles. We had to have a certain number of hours. So to make those hours, a lot of school districts would actually give reduced price energy for people to come charge on nights and weekends.
mhm,
And then starting July 1, we felt like we met our hours. So we increased the rate, so we're not losing money on it, but we're also making sure we're being made whole with energy use.
Brian, do you have any comments?
Not really. I had the same question about EV charging, so I'd love to see a, a sort of explanation. I don't think we've ever really gotten accounting for that program, so, but doesn't, it could be offline as well.
I only have one question, and that is, do we keep track of the deterioration of the solar cells themselves?
We do, each report or each year, there's a degradation accounted for. So we'll see it's, I think it's about a 5% per year.
2.5.
What's that?
2.5 depends sometimes.
2.5, okay.
5% depends on the system. Yeah.
Yeah, we have the formulas built into our report, so, it calculates that each year.
Okay, all right. Any more questions, comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Mr. Wallakewicz, would you share a brief overview of the design build process for the 10th site?
Sure, and we felt the slides would be a little difficult to see, so we printed out a larger copy for you to have at your place, so we can follow along. Last May, the board, we had a study session last May to talk about design build options, facility master planning, look at the overall measure and bond program. And then during the summer, we talked a little bit more about it, and then this past fall, we gave an overview to the board of the differences and pros and cons between design build and stick build. And then and direction was given to staff to move into the design build process, which we're in the middle, and we're actually in the process of doing that. So we wanted to do a very high level overview of the design build process and let you know where we're at in the process, and then try to give an estimated timeline of when we think we'll be selecting folks to get into the design build for the 10th site. Last summer in August, the board actually adopted a conflict of interest policy for design build entities, and that was approved by the board because in order to do design build, you had to have an approved conflict of interest policy, which the board did at that time. We have identified the scope. We'll be building a school site, but we are in the middle of CEQA process, and we'll be bringing something back to the board to give you an update on when CEQA will be starting and getting underway as far as the public review period. So the project scope, we know the school building out in the 10th site will be over $5 million. So there's a term called alternative design build or progressive design build. It's used interchangeably. Lisa Gelfin, who is the architect, who's been hired to do some of the schematic designs, just at a very high level for CEQA. It's already, we've talked about it's a 900 school for 900 students, K-8. It's gonna have a fields and gym and so on, offices and library, just like most all of our other schools are at. So the performance specifications is pretty detailed about what the school is going to be and where it's going to be located. The next step in the process is really where we're at right now, is we're going to be releasing a request for qualifications for design build entities known as DBEs. And that's where you have an architect and the builder are working together, and they'll be putting together a project, and we're going to be telling them, hey, this is what we want you to build and design and build for a certain price and budget, which we'll be determining in the future. Once we will do a design build qualification that will create a short list the short list of approved qualified design build entities. Then we'll give those design build entities a request for proposals, and they'll actually give us proposals to do the project for us. And it can be either best value or lowest responsible bidder. But we haven't determined that. Most likely it'll be the best value, because it will be the design builders, they're all gonna be doing the similar type of project for us. It's all gonna be the same type of buildings and things, but it's gonna be, what is their markup? What is their contractor markup? What is their overhead and profit markup? Those are the type of things that could be negotiated, and every contractor and design build entity, they have different sets of fees for those things. So those will be things that in that request for proposal, you can determine best value. And so that'll be something we'll be looking at. Once that process happens, there'll be interviews for the firms. We'll go through the interview process, and then we can start actually negotiating the contract with the selected design build entities. What we will probably do is just establish for the design price only, because we're still a far way away until we decide when this project will happen. So we will have the board will approve a contract for design build. The architect of record will be designing that project, getting it ready for submittal to DSA. They'll be submitting it to DSA, and now if you're following, I'm kind of in the middle box, right in the middle of the paper. Then once we get the project approved by DSA, then we can sign the final contract. And the best, there's different delivery methods. The best way to do it is most likely a guaranteed maximum price. And then there'll be some contingencies built into the contract for any unintended things that come up during construction. Because it's a brand new school site, there'll be a lot of site utilities and things that have to be done in the ground. And sometimes you might experience some change orders and things, but by doing a guaranteed maximum price with some contingencies, allowances, it protects the district from any wild change orders and things like that. So this has been mostly done in private sector, but many school districts are now, it's pretty common for school districts to do design build process. And it's a great savings to the district. We feel like this is a really good approach for us at the 10 site. And so this is a real quick overview, and happy to entertain any questions. And the idea would be like to get the request for qualifications out to design build entities within the next 2 weeks.
Questions for Eric?
Yes.
When do we commit money towards this?
That would be when the board approves a contract for the architect, and the design build entity, probably sometime in, I would say mid to late spring, as we get further down the road, depending on how quickly we get through the process.
And it's not all the money upfront.
No. And the idea would be, we would, enter into a contract for the design phase. And then and then we have to have the money to build the site. So that'll be something that have to happen further down the road. But I think we do want to, we have a commitment to the city of Mountain View for the fields. And so we do want to get this thing into the design as quick as possible, and whatever is reasonable in the springtime.
Do we have anybody wishing? Would board members like to make some comment? Brian? Any comments or questions for Eric?
Not really.
No more than I've already asked. Thank you.
I do have one question, which you made a comment earlier at the very beginning of your presentation. You contrasted design build with stick build, and that puzzled me because I was under the impression that design build was a process to design a school, where stick build was one of the options for how you would build a school. And I just wanted to clarify that.
Correct. So I think when we do a design build, we're gonna be looking for a panelized prefabricated system. And that will be part of our district's want in the design build entity, where if we did stick build, you could still do design build, but then you really give up the whole design process goes into, you basically, you're telling the design build entity, here's your budget, and you can kind of design it ever how you want it. By us saying we want a prefabricated system, it's gonna save us in cost. It'll save us and we can get the project done quicker in construction costs, less general conditions and so on. So there is a difference between stick built and prefabricated, which is kind of what we were talking about earlier. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it seemed to me that these were two different kinds of things, well, apples and one was oranges, and I was just confused about that. The other thing that I was confused about was DSA approval. I believe that we were, at least the panelized construction that we saw had been pre-approved, right? So
Some
are
of
we
the
planning
some-
a full DSA approval? or not?
Yes, all projects that are at schools, all must be approved by DSA.
No, I understand that,
Yeah.
but if the particular panelized construction is pre-approved, then the process is much, much shorter, right?
Correct.
And so we're going for the full DSA approval process, where they look at every single architectural feature, or are we going to take advantage of the pre-approval of the panelized?
Well, DSA will look at the entire project. So they will look at the fields, the asphalt, the paving, and then the buildings is one part of it. The buildings, it will be the structural part and the fire life safety. Some of those components of the buildings are pre-approved, it's called pre-checked. And that will make it go quicker, but DSA, because it's a brand new school site, we'll have a lot of public agency oversight on it. So we will, some of the project will go quicker and some of it will have a normal DSA review.
And what's the difference between full review and the panelized review, roughly speaking?
I couldn't put a number to it, but anytime you have a project that's been to DSA before and they've actually seen it before, they've seen that design, the review is always quicker. But when you do a stick-built design where it's something new and custom and they've never seen it, now they're gonna look at every single nook and cranny of a whole design that they've never seen before. So that's a pretty significant advantage.
Okay, all right. Any more questions or?
I have another question, Vladimir. I have another question about timing, Eric. You said you were hoping to put the request for qualifications out over the next couple of weeks. And then we've also have the CEQA review, which hasn't come in front of us. So does the CEQA review need to be completed before we can do the request for proposal?
All these things kind of lockstep, they can all be ongoing at the same time.
Okay, but I mean, okay. I guess I might have some follow-up questions because it seems like, I mean, the CEQA review might result in mitigations that would then have to be factored into the project, couldn't it?
The project, we wouldn't be able to build like a school for 2,000 kids. So the design is pre-constrained based on CEQA and based on what we're going to declare what the project is going to be. So we wouldn't be able to design anything outside of the scope of CEQA.
Sure. Okay, you know what? I'll follow up with you offline. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Item 5, notice of completion of the Play and Park Structures, Inc. Eric, go ahead.
Yes, this was a very exciting notice of completion to bring to the board tonight. And as you know, we've been doing notice of completion, the last few large projects that require them. The playground equipment replacement project here at Covington was completed last week before winter break. I was out there today and it was 4:30 and I must have saw 60 kids out there. And so it was really neat. We have seen kids here on the weekends and so tonight we're asking the board to approve a notice of completion for the Covington Playground Equipment Project. But I want to emphasize, you know, our schools are community assets. And I think that's something that we have to think about when we're doing all our modernization projects and looking at our master planning. These are great assets to the community and for our families. Some of the families that are here, their kids aren't in school yet. But they're gonna be coming, they're gonna be future. And it was great to hear JP say his wife went to Almond and Egan out. I'm like, oh, that's so heartwarming, right? But you think of what our schools are, they really are community assets. They're electric vehicle charging stations and they're places for families to come. And so when we think of all the things that we've got going on in the district, it's really nice to see a nice project like that bring the community together. I came by last weekend and there were so many kids out there on a Saturday. I'm like, oh my gosh, look, all these kids here. So really nice to see the district's facilities being utilized. We have summer rentals, which impacts so many of our kids. We have our ELOT programs, our childcare providers. So it's really nice to see a project like that and benefit so many kids in the community, whether they have a kid here or not. So tonight we're just asking the board to file the notice of completion for this project.
Any public comment? So any questions for Eric or any comments? So this is an action item. I will entertain a motion.
Move that we approve the notice of completion for the play and park structure at Covington.
I'll second.
Moved by Steve and seconded by Shelley. I'll take a roll call vote. Steve?
Yes.
Shelley?
Yes.
Yes.
Jessica, yes. Brian?
Yes.
And I vote yes, so the motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Just a quick comment, I used to play with my kids on the structures where you play tag, and it was actually
Nice.
quite entertaining for an old person. Item number 6, district calendar, Ms. McGonigal.
Yes, so, our families are already calling
Yes.
to say, what is the calendar for next year? So Erin Green works closely with MVLA as they set their calendar. You know this, they set their calendar first. We then mock up, Marcy does, thank you, Marcy, great work of mocking up a couple of options that work closely with the MVLA calendar. Erin meets with a consultant group within the district of teachers and classified staff. And this is where we landed for the 24-25 school year. So typically we look at the start week, the end week. This current year, we moved our professional development days to more align with the high school's mental health days in October. So today is just a day for you to discuss, ask if you have any questions. It will come back to you on the 22nd for approval. Happy to answer any questions you might have. It is interesting to note that the high school has 2 more instructional days than we do. They have 182, we have 180. I don't know if that has to do with their finals or.
It could be hours that they,
Yeah,
or
instructional
minutes
minutes,
that
that
they
could
have
be.
to have. They also take more days off than we
Yeah, they
do.
start earlier.
Yeah.
They end around the same time,
Mhm.
but yeah. Yeah.
Do
Happy
you
to
have
answer
any public comment?
comment.
I'm sorry.
I found it interesting how they're starting on Monday, and we normally are a week after them. Well, only a couple days, I'm fine with it, just a first.
Yeah. Yeah, we looked at it would have been the 21st of a start.
Please go ahead.
I'm making a quick comment on behalf of PTAs, because moving the professional development day changed the rhythm, a very long held rhythm for walkathon. And I understand, I'm not expecting change, but communicating directly to PTAs and coming to a consensus in advance would be really helpful. We definitely, all schools, from what I heard, saw a reduction in participation this year, partly because PTAs kind of new or a little caught flat-footed and really getting communication out to families. And definitely just that component, because our calendar changes so little. I mean, genuinely, most of these days were the same days as when I went to Springer. And so like, even I was thrown off as a parent who watches the calendar pretty carefully. And so just thinking forward for Walkathon, which is such an important fundraiser, that is a really big change, and just kind of being mindful of that. And so particularly if you can just share that with them as soon as possible, that'd be great. Thank you.
Any more comments or questions? Thank you for your comments. Ms. McGonigal will
Yes.
definitely take that into consideration.
Absolutely.
Board and committee assignments, again, Ms. McGonigal.
Yes, so at our last meeting, you all talked about which committees and assignments you would like to be a part of. I know Marcy and Brian worked on solidifying that, and it comes back to you tonight for approval.
Thank you, public comment. Board questions and comments?
Looks like what we discussed.
Okay, so this is an action item for approval. I will entertain a motion to approve the board and committee appointments for 2024.
That we approve the committee and appointments as presented.
I'll second.
So moved by Steve and seconded by Shali. Roll call vote. Did I take a roll call vote last time?
You
Or
didn't
did I
take
just
it up.
skip over it?
No,
The last time we needed it, you
You
did.
did it.
We
Okay,
did it.
right, sorry. Memory.
We're not doing the calendar because it's a first read.
Right.
That's what you're-
Action, okay, I got it.
Sorry.
Take a roll call vote on a board and committee approval. Steve,
Yes.
Charlie,
Yes.
Jessica. Are you getting back in?
No.
Brian?
Yes.
Sorry. And I vote yes as well, so the motion passes 5-0. Ms. McGonigal.
All right, item 8. As you know, we are deep in facilities master planning right now with our CAW group, and we hope to solidify our staff and parent survey. We were hoping today, but probably tomorrow, to get that out to families. And Eric and I are working on creating a financial team as we develop our facilities master plan and the needs at our sites. We want to make sure that we have financing in place. So one of the groups that we want to consult with is Team Civic. So tonight we have a contract to have them join our team. Happy to answer questions, but we'd like approval of the contract tonight.
We have no public comments, so we'll go right into board questions and comments from.
I highly recommend their services. Generally, when we work with them, we get good results. And they know how to work with us quite well in general.
And just to confirm, it's the same team working with us that who knows our district super well. Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any more comments? Brian, do you have anything to add? No? Okay, so I entertain a motion.
Move that we approve the contract with Team Civics as presented.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Oh.
Wait, sorry, roll call vote. Steve,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Yes.
Jessica, and Brian,
Yes.
and I vote yes also. Motion passes 5-0. Item 9, board and policy updates. Ms. McGonigal.
Yes, just a few updates for you. This is a first read for you, so if you do have any questions, please let us know before the 22nd and we can clarify things or make changes as necessary. But those will come to you on the 22nd for approval.
We don't have any public comments, so, questions and comments from the board? Brian? Steve? Nope. I don't have anything either. This is, I guess, just a discussion item, right?
Yes, just discussion tonight.
All right. So it's now time for board administration comments. Sandra, do you have anything more that you want to
I
add?
do not.
Okay,
Thank you.
Carrie?
And two brief comments, if you need, it's a follow-up of Greg and Sarah's presentation, and Sandra mentioned it in her opening comments. We have our January Professional Development Day coming up next Tuesday, where we'll continue our work on the wheel and the LASD student experience. But I also want to mention that in addition to those sessions, we have strand sessions, and I just wanted to give you a highlight of some of them. We have developing agency by scaffolding for success, project-based learning, student engagement, student-centered classroom, artificial intelligence by our own superintendent. And I just want to mention that Greg and Sarah craft the main session for all teachers. I mean, they're experts, and I just feel so proud of them. I just want to call it out today. I get to lead a session, but they're crafting the material for our teachers in our district, and I just couldn't be prouder. You mentioned feeling a little emotional.
Yeah.
I did too. I just thinking back to our own school experience. I'm the first generation college graduate.
Yeah.
On both sides, and
Yeah.
so to hear Sarah share a little bit about her story and how we're crafting student stories, it feels really good. So thank you for the opportunity to present this evening. The second update in my work now with the Educational Technology Department, as you know, we've transitioned to Gmail. We're now transitioning to one-to-one Chromebook at the junior high level. So every junior high student takes home a device now, and so we've been working through all of the logistics for that. You'll be seeing a contract come forward for a contract for securely. It's called an enhanced security tool. We have filtering and all the things that we need to have for keeping kids safe at school, but we want to just upgrade that. It's in alignment with what MBLA uses. So you'll see that come forward next time. So I wanted to mention the tech department and both of our junior high principals. This has been a pretty big project on their plate that are already pretty busy time, and they've done just an amazing job with it.
Thank you. All right.
Just wish everyone a happy new year, and the governor will have his January budget proposal will be next week for the 24-25 budget, so it'll be interesting to hear some of the proposals for that. And then staff, we're getting ready, hard to believe, we're planning for the summer already for all the different projects and different maintenance projects and things that we've got going on. So we're taking a really good deep dive into our facilities and look at some of our different maintenance projects of how we can be more efficient.
I thought the governor was going to give his update on the 10th, which is Wednesday.
It is on the 10th, but we'll be getting, I'll getting the full breakdown from school services the week after, like the 17th. And what I'm trying to do is, if I can get, all the slides together, we can give a brief highlight, at the January meeting. And then CACF is meeting this week to work on a mid-year report as well.
Jessica, do you have?
I attended, 4 times in 2023. I attended the menorah lighting, as did Stephen, Brian. I attended the SEC BOE meeting on 12/13, and actually will be going to this week's one. They're continuing to aggressively evaluate Marianne Dewan. And so as president of the SEC FBA, or as a person who cares and who has worked a lot with her in that role, I have loved what she's done for our county ever since she's been the superintendent. So I will be continuing to go to those board meetings to make sure that they hear that many of the trustees in the county very much like her and would like her to stay on. I also went to challenge team on 12/14. And that's it.
Shelley? Nothing? Brian, do you have some updates you want to share?
No, nothing.
All right, I don't have anything.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Ditto. Ditto.
All right. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.